Well, for more on the future of football in China, let's bring in Wes Harris. He's the managing editor at Business of Soccer. Welcome to the show, Wes.
Thank you for having me.
So let's look ahead. What are your overall expectations for this year's season in China?
I think it's another year of focus on continuing to develop the league and continuing to develop the product that is going to help grow the league and continue to push it from, a top 10 league to a top 5 most popular league in the world. And ultimately, that's the goal. You've heard the big push from the president himself. They want to be a major contender for a World Cup. And some of the rules driven down on the roster changes that you just discussed are trying to address that very goal. So I think more of the same in terms of development on the field and trying to become a little bit more fiscally responsible.
And speaking of that, being fiscally responsible, we know that there are new restrictions in place on transfer fees. How do you see that impacting the Chinese league in 2017?
I think you're going to see a little bit more of a focus on trying to target, be a little bit more targeted with the money allocated and not, you won't see as many foreign players brought in for such high transfer fees. It's definitely going to restrict them a little bit, so they have to be a little bit more choiceful with how high they can go with some of their offers. You're not going to see as many high transfer fees, I don't anticipate, nor as many high salary wages. Carlos Tevez, who was signed in the last year, is making north of $800,000 a week in his just base salary, and I don't think that that's sustainable, being that that's almost a year annually, just shy of the average club total revenue in the Chinese Super League as it is. So I think they're trying to prune some of those spendings, help make this a much more sustainable talking.
Now, when spending more on some of these foreign players, we also know that there's a restriction on the
regards to the development of Chinese domestic football. So in addition to the reduction in foreign players announced that we just discussed, they also announced that a mandated 2 roster spots for your starting lineup will be need to be taken by a Chinese national under 23 player. So putting that focus on the youth and developing them and getting them real league experience in the top flight within China to help, again, drive towards that goal of being a contender with the national team for ultimately a World Cup win is the goal. But all of that points to a focus, as I mentioned, around developing the game domestically all the way up, from the youth levels all the way up to the top flight.
Now, what about in terms of sort of the financial challenges in building the league? What would you say are some of the key issues?
Some of the key issues are just some of that irrational spending, back to what we talked about. And it's just, you get into, if not regulated, you get into a situation where we saw with some of the teams in England and other countries throughout Europe, where UEFA, the governing body of European soccer, has instituted what they call financial fair play. And so that is a set of regulations in terms of how much a team can spend over the course of 3 years and how much they can operate at a net loss, because currently the Chinese Super League is operating under a business model that is dependent upon, billionaire owners that are willing to take the personal hit of the operating losses that the team sustain from these high expenditures on foreign players, on base salaries, etc. And they need to move towards a place where it's not dependent on that, and the team revenues are able to keep up with the cost demands from players and youth development, etc. So I think that they're trying to get to a place where that can happen.
Now, in terms of the ultimate goal for Chinese soccer, is it more about having the best players in the world playing in the league, or really becoming that development ground that perhaps other countries may want to take players from?
I think you get to a bit of both. I think they want to try a bit of a happy medium. You definitely don't want to be focused too much so in one corner or the other. But I know that in terms of the national team push to win a major World Cup, be a major contender, you have to have that focus on youth development and developing that talent domestically. So that is a very large push. And again, those roster regulations would indicate that that's kind of more of the focus there. But at the same time, you need to grow that top flight league and grow that popularity. And that comes with bringing in some big names that are going to draw those crowds, increase match day, increase the valuation of the teams and the value of, the deals that they have with broadcasters and commercial sponsorships, et cetera. So I think that they are placing a little bit more of a push towards the youth development and developing talent domestically, but you'll see a balance of both.
All right, Wes, sorry, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us. Wes Harris, Managing Editor at Business of Soccer.